Hello, hello, my name is Troy Ruhe,
I'm Tyler Hoskins.
and you're listening to our Sick Ass podcast. Alright, kia ora, and welcome back to another in-guest episode of the Sick Ass podcast. Today's guest is someone who I have known for quite a few years now. If you can see him on the visual, so if you're watching on YouTube, he is looking somewhat today, which is a little bit different from how I used to know him back in the day. So we can talk a little bit about his transformation. We can talk about him developing as an individual. But yeah, so what I would say today is that we used to call this guy Big Walt. He still is big, bigger than your average. And if you were to get us a few years ago, I think there would be too much muscle to actually keep him on this couch right now. But yeah, so today's guest is someone quite special because he is someone who, as we were going through a lot of our journey in training, we did a lot of the similar things, but also he's gone through massive transformations to actually get him to where he is today. He talks about the shift in his mentality around training, but also how other people should be training as well. But those are stories we can get into. So today we have Big Walt on. Thank you for sitting down with me today.
Cheers, bro. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so the first question that I like to get everyone doing is just, what are your credentials? So everyone knows that I studied PE, you studied PE as well, but what were your interests, I guess, when you were coming through with your study?
I think most of it was geared towards powerlifting, like initially, just when I first got to university, just because I'd started doing powerlifting beforehand, and then was kind of just on that path really, and then, so yeah, I think the majority of it would have been just geared towards powerlifting and resistance training. So yeah.
So with the powerlifting, most people who don't know, so if they go over, your Instagram doesn't even have those videos anymore, but back in the day, so he was crazy. He was actually one of the first people to break some plates at Unipole, as far as I'm aware. But so you actually started training quite young.
Yeah.
Right. So if you just want to talk a little bit about how you got into your training.
Yeah, so we probably started, me and my brother, my younger brother, who's a year younger than me, we probably started about the end of year 10, just that summer break. And it kind of just came around by seeing my dad like train all the time in the garage. Like we'd always come home and like say hello to everyone, like my mum pick us up, and then we'd see my dad in the garage training. So I don't know, they kind of I think that influence came from him, just because it was around us a lot. So and then yeah, just through that pretty much. And then and some other things that happened in like rugby. So when I was like year 9, we played couple like Māori boys schools. Oh, not Māori boys, it's both genders, but we went to Whitehall College, and I just remember running the ball one time and got ragdolled and like picked off the ground, and this guy like spun me around in the air. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, I'm probably not that keen to have that happen again. So I started doing weights to try to get bigger. Yeah. And it kind of just went from there.
Right. So most of your like getting into training was mostly to like get stronger and be like just a powerful human being. Yeah,
it's pretty much just get bigger, get stronger. I don't know, just and like for like mental mental things as well. So like just feeling better about yourself. Like not that I felt bad about myself, but I don't know, there's always like room for improvement. So it was just cool to like when you'd see changes, you're like, oh yeah, this is cool, I can keep doing this, and kind of gives you more motivation like to build on that base.
Yeah. So what were some of the changes, I guess, because not many people who do train now actually start about year 10, year 11, so like 14, 15 years old. What were the first couple of changes that you started to see after training? Like just personally?
I think you have a bit more discipline towards things in your life, just because you have that little set routine. Like I don't know, if you did like a split, like a training split, you'd be set on that, and they could kind of transfer to other things. Like you'd I don't know, you'd be a bit more I don't even know how you'd say it, but like I don't know, you'd be a bit more motivated to finish other things as well, and it just kind of kept you in a routine and gave you like a little schedule to like stick to. And
so like that transferability from I'm getting this gym routine done, and you're like finishing that, so that gives you some sort of accomplishment in that field, but then you kind of took that over to like maybe your schoolwork or like any jobs that you had as well. Yeah,
you kind of just like, it gives you a little bit more ability to follow through. Like I didn't do that all the time, but I don't know, it definitely improved it a bit. And like just the body composition changes as well, like just getting like bigger from like being quite small, and then just things like that, and feeling a bit better.
I never thought I'd ever hear you say being quite small. Because the first time I actually got to know you, you would have been around 18, and I did a bit of tutoring for you. and you were probably one of the biggest and strongest people I had seen in a very long time. So I think you were predominantly powerlifting at that time.
Yeah.
So just a big flex right now. What at that point were your body weights, and then maybe just like your main lifts?
Just at my strongest, or just at
We'll
me?
do like just so people can get perspective as an 18-year-old, and then at your strongest.
When I was 18, probably I think how much I was benching maybe like 160 or something, and then deadlift was like 270, and then my squat was about 240, I think.
Goodness gracious!
But like some of those wouldn't pass for like powerlifting standards, but yeah, I kind of did it for enjoyment as well, so just enjoyed doing it.
And then at your strongest?
The best squat I did was 300, and then bench 190, and squat was 290. Deadlift was 290.
Right. Yeah. So now, just for people out there, like I've never been the strongest guy myself, but I haven't even put those sorts of weights like on me. There was never any chance that I could unrack anything over 160. I don't even think I could hold that out in front of me. And I've done like holds where you just take it out of the rack and don't even squat it, but just to like get your body used to it. And I think like I tremble at 260. So that's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. There's got to be something in you though when you're talking about it's for fun. Like there's got to be something in you a little bit different. Or you like, was it people that you're around that actually help you to push to that sort of limit? Because not many people are going to be at that level of, lifting.
Yeah, I think it was like a mixture of things, I reckon. Maybe some of it came from the years of like doing that training. I kind of got known for like how you said like Big Walt. I kind of got known for that, so like it kind of felt like that was a part of me. So that kind of like gave more motivation to carry on doing it, because I was like, well, this is, it was almost like that was like who I was, almost like just the weights training. But
right.
Yeah, and then like the competition with my brother, because he's a year younger than me, but he's like way stronger than me now. Or he got stronger than me quite quickly. But yeah, there was like that competition, and then just probably like little influences from like my dad, just saying stuff on the phone. Nothing bad, just like little banter that you have with like your parents and stuff. It's just that kind of like pushed it on. And then having mates as well that did powerlifting, and yeah, I think it was just like a cool challenge. It was like a bit of a like a aggression release. Like you could if you had stuff that happened during the day, or like I don't know, you get amped up quite easily. It's just like a good way to like just release energy.
Yeah, and
it's like beneficial as well, so it's kind of like a win-win.
Right. And you touched on something there that's quite interesting, is that your identity was tied, the Big Walt, and everyone knew you as the guy who would just like stack plates. So like at Unipole, every time Walt was there squatting, like the whole gym would basically stop every time you unrack the bar just to like step out. Everyone would stop, watch what you were doing, see you hit your set, put it in, and then it's like everything went back to normal. So I mean, if people are watching YouTube now, and if people have seen you transition from then to now, they would have known that, you went through a pretty major cut. So we'll just talk about how, what was that change in identity? Well, firstly, what was the cut that you did from, I think it was 2016 or 17 to where you are now? So what, like body weight, and then the kind of mechanisms that you went through?
Yeah, so, the cut started from just the end of the 2016 second semester. And then it went to probably like early February. Right. So I dropped like 20 something kgs. And I don't know, it was just like a big drastic change. I kind of just wanted to switch up like how I looked and how I felt. I wasn't really like stoked with how I looked in the mirror and things. I was pretty happy with like what I was lifting, but I don't know, I think just with like health and having like all those different sectors of like health, like the spiritual, physical, mental, like I was all good physically, maybe not like aerobic like base wise, but like how strong I was good with that, but mentally I didn't feel that good. Like I didn't like how I looked, and I think my training was like taxing my nervous system a bit too much as well. Like I was going a bit too heavy, and I was like, there was a bit of ego lifting involved with that, but yeah, I just wanted to switch up things, so I just did like a real crash kind of diet. I wouldn't like prescribe the same thing to anyone else kind of, unless you like want to do it real quickly, but yeah, I pretty much just cut out like carbs and things like that, just did real like keto kind of style diet, hit like every day, and full body weight sessions and then just stripped off the weight, and then I was pretty happy with how I looked at the end of it though, but it was pretty taxing to do, but I'm like glad I did it. Like it was a cool thing to do because I came back and like a lot of people didn't even like recognize me, so that was like kind of cool to do. So
yeah, so that's and that's you've basically been at about the same size since then.
Yeah. So I'm like 100 now or 99, and I was about 92 at the lightest for that. So
right. Yeah, so I mean, something that's come through on this podcast is that when I do talk about training and when I do talk about getting people more physically active, you know, we never really focus on weight, but the reason I wanted to discuss this is because, you know, we've all been in spaces where we've been at like what we would consider the best body shape we've ever been, and I like now am definitely a lot smaller than I have been. And sometimes it can play a little bit on your mind, but it sounds like you got, you know, quite accustomed and, you know, you got very comfortable with this new size. What for you did you see as the main differences from being like big Walt to Walt now?
I think heaps of it came, because I like, it's not a really like possible thing, but I kind of like the idea of being good at everything. Or like not well, it don't have to be the best, but just like be able to always like compete in like every kind of like aspect of fitness. So I like being able to like run. I don't really swim that often, but like run, jump, like lift. I don't know, be good at like circuit things. So I kind of just wanted to do that. So I think that kind of transferred into how I changed my body, instead of like just being good at like doing like strength movements or like just doing like real heavy like powerlifting movements, to going to be able to do like a mixture, like a range of things good. So yeah, I think it just came from more my like want to be good at like a lot of things.
Right. So you feel like the body or your abilities as an athlete or as a human now are a bit more well-rounded than they used to be.
Yeah, because like if you saw it on a graph, I'd feel like the strength and stuff would be like high, but like aerobic base and like other things, and like mobility, flexibility would be like right on zero or something. So. Right.
Yeah, and so just I think one of the first things that I saw when you did kind of make that transition with your training, you actually went into a bit of boxing. So you just want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I think that like the start of that came from doing so like being like so like focused on powerlifting and like getting quite big. Like I think a lot of people automatically assume that you can like fight and then or that you're like tough and stuff, but like I legit just did weights. Like like if I probably thought I was like I could decently like fight or anything, but I couldn't. Like I know I'd get dropped in if anything happened. So I kind of just like I didn't want it to be like a I kind of just wanted to make it a bit more real and like be able to like take on those skills and actually be able to like walk the talk kind of.
Right.
But yeah, and it was like kind of cool just like learning new techniques. I kind of like the like technical aspect of it, how you could kind of pick up new things daily, because you can always like work on stuff in boxing. Like you'd always like do slipping or like I don't know, straightening up your jab, like keeping your elbows in, just doing stuff like that, and it's stuff you can do by yourself. And like I like training with other people like heaps, but I like training by myself as well. So I don't know, I just get like nervous and stuff when I'm training with heaps of people all the time. So I just like I like being able to focus on those like technical aspects just like alone, just like in the gym and stuff. So yeah, it was cool just doing that, and it was it was just cool to like do something different, since I'd been doing powerlifting and things like that for like the past 4 years before that, like seriously. So it was cool to like switch up like modes of training.
Yeah, and it's cool because you learn like new things about different sports, but also new things about yourself, like things that you never ever thought you could probably get into. And just you can do another flex as well. You've actually competed in boxing?
Oh yeah, I've only had 2 fights. So yeah. I had 2 fights just and won both of those. But yeah, I kind of just I left the fight gym, so I was doing personal training there, but I left that gym and then just started working at the Moana gym. But I've just been more focusing on my own training and just doing more just trying to fill in goals that I had for myself, or like how I just wanted to change my training to how I think training should be done. So yeah.
Right, we'll touch on that, but just firstly, that's 2 fights more than most people who say they'll knock people out on Facebook comments. So yeah, well done for getting through those. So you did touch on now training how you think training should be done, which is, I think it's a really cool conversation to have with a lot of people, because a lot of people can give different ideas, and then maybe after like so many years of running this podcast, I can take bits of everyone's different trainings and then put them into one big training program that could be as close to optimal. So what is your training now, and what are some of the beliefs behind how you were training?
My training now, I don't know if that's like a thing to talk about, because I'm just kind of switching it up and just finding what works. But I just like the mixture of like resistance training and like steady state kind of cardio. Like I'll do a little bit of HIIT stuff every now and then, but most of it, like the majority of it for like the last couple months, has been like steady state stuff. Yeah, kind of like the idea of just like balancing out like your body, just working on like weaknesses, and then just putting that steady state in there for like some like longevity benefits, and just like benefiting your health and I don't know, your heart health, and just recovery between sessions, and yeah, a bit of mobility as well. So I didn't really do any mobility like a couple of years ago, so that was good to like get some of that stuff, and you can find out what you like weekend. So that was good to add that in.
Yeah, so a few years working in different gyms, and you talked about shoring up some different weaknesses. Sometimes if you get stuck in the same planes of motion, for example, like you're training for something like powerlifting, where you only have your 3 lifts and some accessories, but the accessories are to help with those 3 lifts. What are some of the like biggest weaknesses that you've seen in yourself in terms of movement deficits, and that you see in like other people who do come to you for advice, or that you see around gyms?
A big thing in other gyms, I think, was people like lacking the ability to connect with their muscles. Like, so people doing like scapular retraction and stuff for like rows and things like that, they'd be doing rows, and like all the time they'd be saying like, oh, I could just feel it on my bicep, but they didn't really know how to like move their scapula, like depress and like retract it, and then things like that. So a lot of things like people not being able to complete those like fundamental movements well, especially like deadlifts. So people would be like trying to do a Romanian deadlift, and they'd be feeling it in their low back because they weren't like hinging at their hips, and they were just like flexing their spine kind of. So yeah, just I think people just not understanding how to do fundamental movements properly, because I think most of that is where I think most of the focus should be on that. So I feel like if you can do those movements properly, like why wouldn't you be able to do movements in sport like well, kind of, because like that's how your body's going to move. You can't make up like any new movements. So if you're like good at that, like I always thought that you'd be good at like doing sports. So it's kind of like the base of like movement. So
so just moving in the fundamental planes of motion, and making sure that you're covering all those different bases. Yeah. So what do you find? So when you talk about scapular retraction, I find that's the same thing for people who bench as well. A lot of it is just like really tricep extensions. And they don't actually get into a position where, I mean, I was guilty of it for a very long time, and that's because I had no idea. So what are some of the things that, you have seen that work for like maybe some cues, or maybe some things that you've seen or you've implemented yourself to actually help people start to connect with those muscles, or actually to put themselves in better positions?
I think with the movements, like trying to do cues, it's kind of dependent on the person, but maybe just breaking it down like real slowly, and just actually slowing down movements was a real good one. Like doing rows and things like that, just going back to the scapular retraction, just pulling your shoulder blades together and just going back to the start real slowly, because then you can kind of like make that connection with the muscles that are working. And once you've I feel like once you've got that like thought in your head of like how it feels, you can kind of like transfer that to like other movements that are like, you can transfer that to other exercises that are of the same movement. So yeah, it's just building. I think it was just building that muscle mind connection, and then coming up with good cues that were like specific to each person, because a lot of people, like everyone has different things that they do differently. So it was more just trying to figure out how they were moving and how you could improve that. So
it's frustrating, because like on Instagram posts, it's like a swipe post, and it's like, are your feet facing out when you're doing this? Wrong. Like you should be doing this. But it's really difficult on an Instagram post that every single person you're talking to has like a different hip socket, has like a different femur length, and all these different things, and people are like, nah, this is the right way to do it.
Yeah, because there's only that one video, so you can't really change it for like the people, like the thousands of people that are looking at it. So yeah, if you fell into the category that video was like trying to like push towards, then you were sweet. But like there's heaps of people that don't. So yeah, I think heaps of it's just about adapting to the person that you're talking with.
100%. And so I mean, you've been around the fitness industry. I'm not sure if that's like a road you ever want to go down, but when you're talking about the basics there, so it sounds like you can take the basics and like you can milk it for all it's got, basically, so that people can become, you know, better movers, but at very fundamental movements, and you can kind of train those and keep hammering them for so long, but it's hard to sell that.
Yeah.
So what have been some difficulties that you've found when like you're trying to just tell people, oh yeah, you could do this or you could do that, but they're like, nah, I've heard that you need to do this, or they're doing movements that like that's so
Fast and
advanced.
complicated.
Yeah. Has there been any like frustrations from you, or do you just kind of like, oh yeah, it's all good?
Oh no, because I like giving my opinion kind of on stuff, especially if I think that it's real right. Like sometimes it might not be, and I'll find out later on that I'm not, and I'm like, but then I kind of won't say anything about it and just go quiet. But yeah, like I think heaps of people will come to you. Like so when I did personal training just for that year and a bit, I kind of like expected to like work with higher level like athletes or like people, but like the reality is you don't really. You're kind of like helping just like the everyday person, and a lot of them want to just lose weight. And I think when they were coming to me asking that, I'd kind of answer with like I didn't try to dress it up. I was pretty much just like, oh, well, you pretty much just need to eat less calories and just move a bit more.
Yeah.
And they'd kind of look at me like shocked and be like, nah, there must be way more to it than that. Like I think they just thought that fitness was a lot more complicated than it is. And it'd be cool if like more people knew that it wasn't as complicated as this, because then they could have a bit more power over their like their training and like their like health. Because I think they think if you're a bit like less educated, it's more likely that you'd kind of go to other people for like advice and like throw money at like your health. But you can like if you just know the basics, you can pretty much just do anything. Like you can pretty much what's it called, like take control of your health just wherever you are. And yeah, I think yeah, it's just about like breaking through to people that health isn't as complicated as people think.
Sure. Yeah, and I think it's quite difficult because we are battling a very expensive market right now, where a lot of people can sell because they see that there is like a lot of misinformation out there, and they're like, oh, people are eating this up, people are buying this, but people who are truly in it to help people, like yourself and myself and other people that I get on this podcast, is that we want to be at a point sometime where hopefully these people will never need us again, because they can just go and do it by themselves. And now you touched on health there, and actually quite recently, so we were what was meant to be last week, but he had to go home for a few things, and it's something that, you know, I've been through as well. My father had a few complications, and yours has now recently gone through that, but he's doing well now.
Yeah. So he's just he had a couple stents put in just for like a minor heart attack he had, but yeah, so yeah, he's doing all good. I think he just doesn't want to accept that he's sick. Yeah,
right. So where I'm hoping to move with research in the future is actually looking at our, Pacific Islands and Māori males and physical activity. So like the different perceptions of and attitudes of actually accessing help for that sort of stuff. Like, being okay with not being so strong and different things, but then also trying to get back into it. What are some of the key takeaways from your degree, because you did a lot of clinical exercise physiology as well, that you started to implement? Because it changes when it gets a little closer to home, when you're learning about a case study and like, yes, this is a real person, but when they're not a family member, you're kind of like, oh yeah, I know all these different facts. But then when you see like what you can apply will actually help someone like very close to you, how did that change how you thought about the role of physical activity?
I think it was just about educating him what needed to be done, like post, or like just after his heart attack. So it was more about trying to show him the like importance of like steady state kind of cardio and like how that helps with like heart efficiency and just like all the health benefits it gives you, and just trying to show him that was more important than like lifting kind of heavier weights and things like that, and like how I was telling him to like dial back his like volume and intensity of like his weights training, just to kind of help with like putting a bit less stress on him. And yeah, I think it was just more like trying to change his views on like exercise actually, because he probably didn't think that steady state cardio was something that would need to be done, or like he didn't really think that was kind of like the manly kind of thing to do. But
sure.
Yeah, it was kind of just changing his views on it. So yeah, you get like passionate about it kind of, but I'm kind of like, I kind of like just saying it how it is. So I
Yeah.
was just telling him like he needs to do this.
Yeah.
You could try to say it in a nicer way, but I felt like it's just better to kind of just be real open about it and just share like my opinion on it. So yeah, I just told him.
Yeah, sometimes a bit of tough love, and just like, this is the way it is.
Yeah.
These things are gonna help you the most. But then, like, obviously, there's someone you have a bond with. I mean,
Yeah.
he's been your old man since forever. So what are some of the perceptions then, I guess, around, you know, like training that have frustrated you, that you've tried to set straight? So I know you talked about people thinking it's more complicated than it needs to be with regards to health, but what are some things that, you know, frustrate you around when people train, they think these are the outcomes?
I think maybe like training duration. Like a lot of people ask me in the gym like, that I'm working at now, they ask me like, oh, how long do I train for and things like that, but I kind of think that's like the wrong way to look at it. Like I could train for 3 hours but do like shit all, like, you know what I mean, like just do like the worst training or whatever, have like 10-minute breaks between sets. Like I feel like if you're just doing like, I don't know, you could do like 3 sets or whatever, but just doing it with like 100% intensity, not in terms of load, but just like your focus on the exercise. Maybe not focusing on balancing out like movements, and because so people would do like chest, back, shoulders, arms, legs, like a split like that or whatever, and then they'd carry on doing that and be making all these like imbalances, but they wouldn't really go looking back on that and trying to fix it. So I think it's just like trying to show people that you should be trying to, like, if you're doing resistance training, you should be trying to do it in a manner that like balances out your body and is good for like posture, helps you to move better. Because like why would you want to, like, you can, like, it is cool like doing it for aesthetics and stuff as well, like especially if you're doing bodybuilding, things like that, but I feel like just for the general population who aren't like bodybuilders and things like that aren't real specific, they should be training to like kind of or training for life, like you said before, like just trying to make themselves better, yeah, just like feel better and everything. Just, I don't know, just training for life.
Just general life.
It's hard to explain. But
that's the sport, just, is that we're like, so that anything that you can do in life, you can do better and feel better for it. And it's quite disheartening sometimes, because you can get people and you can get them moving for the first time and moving in a way that actually makes them feel free. And they'll tell you, they'll say, this is the best I've felt in so long. But for some reason, it just doesn't click. And like they just go back to their old ways and be like, this is like the greatest I've ever felt. But then they like don't really want to keep at it. So just with regards to your transition, so you went from, what was your weight before you cut down?
116.
And what were some of the differences that you felt, you know, getting to your body weight now? So I know your training had to shift a little bit and like your strength did decrease, but what were some of the like increases in just overall like life feeling that you had?
I could like walk around and by the shops in town and stuff and not get tired. Like, so just small things like that you noticed when you're like bigger. Think just mobility was like increased. I could just get into positions for like lifting a lot easier. Could do cardio like modes, like just treadmill runs and things like that, or like running outside. Bikes and stuff like a lot easier. I think it was just it just because I didn't lose too much strength, so it kind of just, the benefits were just outweighing what I had before. So like how I used to be like quite strong. I just felt a lot better mentally. I felt better as well. And I think another like area that people have with health is like not looking at like the whole like picture. So like they're just kind of focusing on like one aspect out of like the four. So I think I just felt better like overall.
And what did some people say? Like, obviously, I called you Big Walt at the start, and a lot of people did make that comment and were like, do we still call him Big Walt? And all that. Were people quite accepting of the fact that, you know, you've shifted, like that's a new phase of your life?
Yeah, because, I think people just didn't recognise me first, but, no one really said anything. I think they just thought I looked good as well, so, and I've been, like, so since, like, cutting down, because I did a lot of the utilising kind of cardio methods and I don't know, bag work, treadmill, hit stuff. But since I've done the cut, I've like tried to work on getting my strength back up. So I'm like, my strength is like not as nowhere near where it was, but it's like definitely increasing. So I think the difference wasn't as big as like people thought.
Oh right.
And I think what was I gonna say? I think I think to myself, it didn't matter to everyone else as much as I thought it would.
Right.
Like, so everyone called me big Will and stuff, and I was like, oh, it would kind of be weird if I like came back small and stuff like that, and I was weak, and people probably think I'm weak, but no one really cared as much as I thought they did.
Yeah.
Which is like another thing like about fitness. Like, no one really cares about your fitness, I reckon. Like, or your training and things like that. Not as much as you, and that's how it should be, because like they're not going to do your goals for you. So yeah, I think it's just like comes to realization that like no one really cares about like how big you are and stuff like that. Like, they're not gonna like go home and talk about it. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's at the end of the day, like, it's just about how you feel like about your training. So you should always like try align how you train or how you exercise or how you get like any of your like health benefits with how you like with what you want. So with what's important to you.
And have you found that with your shift in training and you becoming a bit more comfortable, you know, with just who you are now and what you are doing, that you've just enjoyed it a lot more?
Yeah, no, definitely. It's just, because that's why I've just changed my training quite a bit, like, over the last 2 years. So I've been, like, I've kept my body weight and stuff down, like, over those last 2 years, but I've just been, doing different things, just doing what I like doing, and I kind of enjoy doing that. Like, I don't really like doing stuff for too long, so it's been cool just switching it up and just, I don't know, it always makes, like exercise, like, exciting, so, yeah, that's always been good.
Right, and that's a really cool point I want to touch on there. So over the lockdown period, so we were out at least like minimum 8 weeks during that time, and what I found was that the people who were bodybuilders and needed machines really suffered because they'd never really tried different methods of training, whereas like because you went from like your powerlifting and you've been through different types of training, you were probably pretty alright during that time, you know, to get on the floor, do a few things, and like get out for runs and all that. Have you found that now that you've got like pretty much more tools in your toolbox to train, you could easily go away on holiday and not worry about a gym?
Yeah, so I think it was just about making do with what you had. So I only had bands and like a kettlebell, but I was just focusing more on like handstand kind of movements, like calisthenics, a bit of shoulder mobility, like heaps of core work. And then doing pack walks, so just like putting weight into a backpack and just doing walks around. I was listening to podcasts, so I was kind of like doing a bit of education as well and like getting my cardio in, so it was kind of cool. It was just cool switching it up for a little bit, because I think I was doing a bit like a bodybuilding kind of phase for a bit just before lockdown, so it was cool to just give my body a rest from that and just do something different. And I enjoyed doing the podcast and stuff, which made like the cardio go easily. So
right, yeah, I mean, if you can somehow, you know, mix a couple of things at once, definitely is something worth your time. So you touched on really cool points there with, you know, no one is really going to judge you as much as you will judge yourself. And sometimes when people step into the gym for the first time, they think that everyone is looking at them, but no one cares. Like, everyone's looking in the mirror at themselves, and then if they catch eyes with you, you're not thinking, oh, that person's judging me. They're like, oh no, that person's judging me. Everyone's just thinking the same things about each other. And like, sometimes someone will do a cool thing like you used to do back in the day, where everyone would stop and watch you squat, but then life resumes, and then people will go back to like, okay, focus on what I'm doing now. So just, you know, a couple of things that I wanted to talk about now is the motivation to actually get into training. So like I was talking about, there's a lot of, I guess, like, people are scared to get into fitness because firstly they think it's an extremely complicated thing to get into, but also if they want to go to the gym, they see it as a very scary place. So we've had a discussion before about motivation, but what are kind of your thoughts around not just getting started, but also pushing yourself to be like the best version of yourself you can be?
I think like a major thing is people figuring out why they want to exercise and why they want to get healthier. So I think if you can figure that out for yourself and not be using like other things, like if you start doing weights just because all your mates do it, like I feel like that's like quite a weak like motive, because once your mates stop doing it, like what do you have then? So I think it's like about figuring out if this is actually what you want to do and why you want to do it. So once you can like figure that out, I feel like it makes it a lot easier to stay like disciplined through the like years of training.
100%.
Because yeah, I think there's always like, it's easy to like, when you get motivated you feel like mean and you're gonna go train and stuff like that, but it's those days you don't want to do it, when you like need that discipline, you kind of like think back about why you're doing this, and that makes it a bit easier to carry on. So I think people just figuring out why they want to exercise or train is like real important.
Do you think that having a purpose that's also kind of within your control as well? So like I know a lot of people when they do start training, it's like I want to lose 5 kilograms, but like weight fluctuates depending on so many different things. So you could be like as consistent that you think you are, and you're doing all the right things, but sometimes your weight just doesn't move. But all these different things like start getting better for you, but you're like, oh, my weight's not moving.
Yeah.
So like actually finding kind of nice tangible things to look after.
Yeah, the other thing that just makes it easier and like less stressful, because there's always just going to be things you can't control. So I think it's just easier to focus on things you can. Just makes it a bit easier for yourself and less like anxiety provoking or something.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think it's just better to if you can just focus on things that are like intrinsic. So yeah.
So do you find now with the different types of training that you're doing, but also when you do start to help other people, your approach is like way different now than it would have been if you were the big strong Walt?
Yeah, I think if I had to train people when I was like my strongest, I think I would have been focusing on trying to get them into doing powerlifting as well, just because like I was doing it and I was like, oh yeah, this is like the best kind of training. Like it definitely isn't, but it's good, but it's like I don't think you should be focusing on just that. But yeah, now I'd probably be focusing more on like letting them tell me what they want to do, letting them move, and then just seeing like little changes I could make to make them feel better. Because like it's kind of like how you were saying before when you were saying that it was what did you say about it being easy to show people different things to make them feel better about training, but it's that like it's kind of sad when like that change you made is real small for you, but like they don't know that stuff, and like if they had just known that, they could have been feeling a lot better while they're training. And it's just kind of like this kind of stink just seeing that people that aren't that educated about training have like heaps of happiness in real small things. Like I just feel like I kind of think that when I show people stuff, I'm like, oh, this seems like common like sense, but it's not common to them. So it's just kind of cool sharing that knowledge though. So
Man, that's an interesting point. I was actually having this conversation with myself not long ago, when there are a lot of things that I have said and pretended I was saying it for the very first time. And sometimes it like just goes straight over their head, but once they get to a point where it like starts making a bit of sense to them, because like they've put a few of the points in place and they're like, oh yeah, I'm going through it, and then you say it again and then it finally clicks with them, and then it's something that they implement into their lives, and they're like, man, I started doing this, like man, I started going to bed a little bit earlier and I'm feeling great. And it's like, I could have told you, or I have been telling you that for so long, but like for them, they need to kind of go on that journey of discovery for themselves. Have you found like there was anything, like even just drinking more water, like anything besides that?
Do you mean just in terms of like my like advice to people? Yeah,
just but like feeling like your approach to telling them and just not making them feel like, yeah, idiot, I could have told you that.
I meant more like towards just like sharing knowledge with them that I thought was like quite simple, but like them it being like a real different like different idea to them. It's like they were like, oh, I'd never thought of that, but I was just, when I like think about like movements of the body and stuff, it was just common sense to me. And then when they like implement it into their training, they were like real stoked with it. And then like when they're happy and they're like come up to you like saying, oh, like I love that movement, it makes you feel good as well, because you're like, that's like real easy for me to do. Like I could put that in my training whenever I wanted to, but they didn't have that knowledge. That's so it was kind of cool giving them the access to that. Like it's simple stuff, but it's just cool when you see it on like a daily basis. Like you're giving people different exercises that they could do to like, I don't know, maybe their like legs, like their back hurts, but because they're not like activating their glutes when they're doing deadlifts and things like that. Like a real easy change for you to do to someone, but them doing that and being like real stoked about it kind of makes it like worthwhile when you're saying it. So it's like, it's just like a cool thing to see.
100%. Now I see where you're coming from now, and that comes full circle with you talking about getting different people active and doing different things, and then so like being able to transfer the skills that they got from that. So like just, I mean, glute activation, when you tell someone just like, oh yeah, just tense your glutes there, and then they're like, oh, hey, I started doing that thing that you taught me on this. And then they're like seeing how they can start to apply it to all these different things. And you're like, soon you're not going to need me because I taught you all of these fundamental things. I see what you mean there. That's really cool, man. So kind of what we do towards the end of each podcast is give people a takeaway, but there have been multiple takeaways during this one. And, it does kind of come down to finding what really does work for you. And I think you touched a lot on, just not getting caught up in what you are doing and getting so invested in that as the only thing, and being able to touch on like weaknesses and being comfortable with actually making these weaknesses either a strong point or slightly stronger than they used to be. So what are some things daily that you try to really work on that make you feel like today was a good day?
Yeah, exercising daily is usually one of them. Maybe working on weak points in my training, like maybe, I don't know, I'm not liking how muscle group is developing or something, or like my mobility in a point's like bad, so I like kind of ticking off things like that. And if I've written it down like the day before, like on that day, and I can see that I've like crossed it off my list, it kind of gives you like a sense of like satisfaction that you're seeing like little goals being taken down, kind of. So just things like that. But yeah, just exercising and just working on weak points pretty much, because that's just kind of like continual improvement. So just getting that little sense of like satisfaction from doing that just makes me feel pretty good. So yeah.
So during your your strength phases and then actually working on weaknesses, what have been some of the weaknesses that you've seen from that transition? Like when you started to get into different I guess positions and whatnot, where did you find was the most common weakness that you had?
Probably balance, I think. Just because most of those movements were like the compound, like those big 3 lifts that you do. I think I didn't do much unilateral work, and yeah, my balance is probably pretty bad compared to what it could have been. I don't know. I felt like I could adapt real quickly to different like exercises and different sports and things. So it wasn't like there wasn't too many like massive like gaps in like my kind of like movement. So yeah, it wasn't too bad, and I felt like I could change quickly. So yeah, there wasn't many like big things.
Right. And now so just before we finish off here, you're on, so you have an Instagram page, but you also have a shop where you guys are selling some stuff, and you've been writing a few articles on that. So I think your definition of self-care, so like when we were younger, we used to be able to go into the gym and pretty much like little to no warm up, and it would just like chuck the bar on, okay, 20s on, and then just like build up from there. I've warmed up, I did some low percentage sets here, but now you're really focused on actually switching or like putting a bit of thought into warm-ups and whatnot, and just actually properly looking after your body so that you're feeling good. So where did that come in with all of your training?
I think just getting injured as well, like at points of like my training like career or whatever you want to call it. I just think I had to put more emphasis into activation and just rehab and prehab. And the thing with that coming into the Konia performance like shopping like thing that we're doing is that I wanted to just like bring light to like real basic things that people could be doing to like change their training. So that's just one of the blogs, but we wanted to go more into doing stuff like showing people how to like execute like fundamental movements and just like little things that they aren't doing that they should be.
Cool.
And I want to go onto that path of like having like, if you see some Instagram pages like I don't know, we were talking about before, ripping it out, but like I like the ones that you can I like pages that are set out and they have like the name of like the thumbnail, they have the name of the exercise that they're trying to prescribe or give, and then just making it real simple, like real easy to access. So like if someone's like they're like hurting their like back when they're doing deadlifts, like again, just going on to like that thumbnail and it just says like how to like do hip hinges like correctly. So I just like doing things that are just real like accessible to people, because I like using that kind of stuff as well. So I thought like if I like doing it, maybe some other people do as well. So we could kind of go along that path of just making like just fitness like exercises and movements just real accessible to other people.
And just knowing the state of affairs that we have with different people now. Sometimes they could have all the information that someone's given them, but for example, it's like a doctor who doesn't look like they lift. The types of people who people want to hear stuff from now are people who are actually out there walking the talk and doing what they're doing. So just before we head off now, just a bit more of an elaboration on where you're hoping to go in the future with what you're doing, but like even if you wanted to stay in the fitness industry or not, and where people can find you on social media and whatnot.
Oh, yep. So I don't know. Yeah, I'm not too sure if I want to stay in the fitness industry and things like that in terms of like career wise or like working, but I'm kind of just figuring out what I want to do training wise, and just when people ask me, I'll try help them and try point them in the right direction. But yeah, I'm all good with like keeping it as a hobby rather than a job. So
Cool.
I like doing what I'm doing at the moment, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
Awesome, man. And where can people find you on the social media?
Oh, just Walter Konia on Instagram, and then we've got our Konia Performance Facebook page and Instagram page, which we're going to be trying to be pushing a little bit more.
Awesome.
In the future. So yeah.
Very good. It's been an absolute honour having you on. I'll for those people who do want to go check out those pages, I will tag him in the post here so that you can go over and see what he's been up to. But I think there are a lot of awesome things to take away from this episode. You've heard it here from someone who's actually been through the transformations himself, someone who's definitely very, very knowledgeable in what he's talking about, but also, someone who has that human element and actually looks at what people want rather than just prescribing things that he thinks they should have, which I think we are starting to see more and more of now, is the cookie cutter doesn't cut it anymore. But yeah, it has been another sit-down episode on the Sick As podcast. Walt, thank you for coming on. And everyone else, stay real. Right, bonus clip right here. So as soon as I pushed pause there, Walt just had an explosion of ideas about different things that he could have talked about. So instead of leaving it for the next time, we thought we'd address it right now. So what we did start to talk about as soon as the pause happened was actually trying to find what makes you tick to get you in there. We talked a little bit about motivation during the episode, but now, he's had a whole heap of different ideas come out. So how is it that you find you can work with yourself, but also others, that actually helps to try and make them tick during training?
I think it's just about figuring out what motivates them. Like a little thing that I like to do I'd do before like heavy sets or anything like that was I'd like kind of, it sounds weird, but I'd like picture like a family member kind of like in a sad state. So I'd picture like one of my like younger brothers getting beaten up or something. Like it sounds real weird to do, but it kind of got me amped to do this set, and like I'd kind of push harder than I normally would. And I feel like you need that kind of motivation to, I don't know, just perform as good as you could. And I think it's just important that people try to figure out what makes them like tick kind of, and what motivates them, just because like it's easy to just get like deterred while you're doing training and things like that. So it's good to have that like strong motivation in the back of your mind. And like that's like, I actually think that was embarrassing to like talk about, but I think if it like works for me, and if the motivation that other people use works for them, they should be using it, because why would you not want to like perform at like your 100% capacity? So yeah, I think it's just important for people to figure that out.
Right. And how was it that you actually came about this? Like, is this a technique that you've heard other people talk about, or did you just one day?
I think I've like, just personally, I don't know if it is like true, but I just feel like I've got a real strong protective like instinct.
Right.
So I just knew that like something like that would really like kind of amp me up. But I think it's important for other people to figure that out as well, like what actually gets them like going, just because I feel like you could utilize that like real well during training.
Absolutely.
Especially like get to those kind of intensities, or like on days where you don't feel like training really. So just tapping into something kind of like deeper.
Right. So with that, actually, that's something I did want to talk about with the transition. So, when we did sports, like you talk about different arousal levels, but then also having to calm those thoughts. When you were boxing, did you find a similar thing, or did you find that you had to be, so you went from like super, super amped to get into a heavy set, and, you visualize all these negative things happening to people that you really like loved, and then you said that amped you up. When you were boxing, did you have a similar tact?
No, it's more like getting into a flow with boxing, I feel like, because there's a lot of things that can just happen like in split seconds. Like boxing just happens in kind of seconds, and like if you didn't do something at the right time, you kind of get caught. So I think it was more just getting into a flow and like changing like your state of like mind really, because like for weights, like how that's like kind of how like the thing I just talked about before was more like geared towards being like aggressive. It kind of like going towards boxing, it kind of, you needed to focus more on being like adaptable, just like adapting to like, different situations. So I think it was more just how you thought about it, like what your kind of headspace going into the exercise, how how that would change.
Right. Did you ever find during boxing though, so say like, you had a plan, and like Mike Tyson was saying, like everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. Did you find that there was a lot more mind games than you ever thought there'd possibly be? So like, not getting reactive to everything that was happening in the ring?
I think heaps. I thought heaps in boxing was about like deception, kind of like trying to make people think that you were doing something that you weren't going to do, or like trying to trick some people into doing stuff like for you, like moving like closer to your range or things like that, or like I don't know, faking punches and stuff like that. But yeah, I think it was a lot more like there was definitely a lot more mind games in it than I thought would be. But yeah, it was cool to just like see that kind of side of the sport.
Right.
Yeah.
And just like final question when it comes back to like weights or maybe any sort of thing. So when people find something that ticks for them, you want them to find something that is both meaningful for them but also is going to help them achieve that goal. So we just had kind of contrasting views there where we had, you know, boxing, which is, you know, you need to be in that moment, you need to be in a space where you can kind of see everything that's going on, and then on the other side is like gearing up for just 100% effort, and not really like too much control or too much technique. So what do you have some like guidance around how people can choose things for different tasks?
I think maybe just following the outline you just said then, like using something that's kind of like real focus for like the weights, because it's like a different like sport, like they're just different like modes. It's hard to say, like and like I wouldn't be able to tell someone unless I knew them, because you don't really know what makes people like get amped up for stuff until you like talk to them and things like that. So them thinking about their like brother getting beaten up might just make them sad. So like it might not work for them. So like yeah, I think it's just it's more about just knowing yourself, and I think that's like a cool journey you can go on when you're training. Like you figure out things that like work for you and what makes you kind of like how you think. So like once you figure that out for yourself, you can it kind of makes training just a bit, I don't know, makes it you can get a bit more intense, but it just makes it like a bit more meaningful as well, because you can you're kind of just aligning with how you think with what you're doing. So yeah,
and it's true, because you know sometimes, like we said, you know, your purpose is always going to be you as like the protector of your family. Like that's never going to go away. But your motivation for how you feel that day could be like 100% in the pits. But if you can get something that brings you out of that, so not only having purpose in your training, but also purpose for like each set that you're going into, and like this is to make me better in whatever it is that you're trying to do. That's really cool, man. Is there anything else you needed to touch on? Actually, one more. Were there any times that you opened up about this sort of thing and then someone had like something wildly different?
No, not really, because I think I think they just didn't think about the same things, but I think a lot of people focused on like a set idea in their head when they were doing training, because most of the people I talk to do weights anyway, or do like types of resistance training, so I think they kind of just they had like similar motives, but just like a different what's it called? Or like the similar way of like thinking about stuff, but they just thought about different things. Like I use family members or something like that, but they'd like, I don't know, they'd be looking at like the end result of like how they'd look, or like how they'd feel after finishing a lift. So like just things like that. I think it was just different for different people.
Right.
And that's like so it makes it hard to like give people advice, because it's always different. Like you're always just dealing with different people. But yeah, once you figure out like what you like want and what motivates you, I think it makes it a lot easier.
For sure. Nice. Very good, and I'm glad we got that down. And the key thing there is making sure that something that you choose actually works for what it is that you are trying to do. So, I mean, you could give Walt's advice here a little bit of a go, but like he said, if it makes you sad and you're sitting there on the bench, you're like, no, I want to go. Like maybe we can try something else. But that's the cool thing with life, is that we have plenty of opportunities to actually go in and try to take some control for ourselves.